It's really exciting to kick off our new program year with our Rally Day Sunday events today. And it's good to see all of you. On behalf of the social ministry team, I would like to welcome you to our first adult education hour of the new program year, which will be and promises to be an exciting and informative year. I'm also excited to introduce Tim Culhane from Outreach for Hope to St. Matthew's this morning. Tim is on the Outreach for Hope board and currently serves as the board director. Tim is going to talk more about that ministry and an upcoming event in which you all can participate. Tim has been actively involved in Outreach for Hope, family ride, run, walk, that's hard to say.
Yeah, that's a lot.
For the last 7 years as a participant, a sponsor, and an on-site leader. Tim is semi-retired, and in addition to Outreach for Hope, he spends his time helping 2 nonprofit groups, Family Promise of Waukesha County and Sleep in Heavenly Peace. He also has spent 17 summers leading youth home repair trips to Appalachia through the Appalachian Service Project. Please join me in welcoming Tim.
Thank you. So I'll appreciate your patience today. This is my first time through the PowerPoint presentation. One of the other things I've learned through adult education over the years is I'm going to start with a video before the presentation, and then that way people can kind of keep drifting in. So we'll see how I can lock up my computer.
How did you get my coat?
And the video I picked is from Cross Lutheran during the COVID pandemic. I think it's the spring of 21, is a video that they put together as a ministry partner.
Oh, you're good.
You can hear me. That is one of your partners that St. Matt's works with. So I thought it'd be fitting we'll just kind of start off with their ministry video, and then I'll head into the presentation.
Today I would like to really talk about the fact that as we look forward to the fall and returning to some programming, even with the variants of Delta and Lambda coming up, that we're trying to make sure that we can ensure the safety of the people returning, because we've had a lot of our participants asking, when are the groups coming back, when is Bible study coming back, and in order to be able to do that safely, we're going to need to ensure that people are vaccinated. So this morning, we are logging in people so that we can see how many of the community that normally comes here are vaccinated, so we can have an idea of numbers, spacing, and so forth for inside, as well as Joyce, who is our community connector, who works with POP and Aurora Advocate, is also here to help let people know about the vaccines, the incentives from Governor Evers, and just to explain that it's not just about us helping ourselves, but also those who are most vulnerable in our community. And given that we're located in one of the zip codes that has the highest incidence of people receiving COVID or getting COVID, it's imperative that we are trying to be safe, and so that we can also continue to do all the wonderful things that we've been able to do through our funding, through Outreach for Hope, CBER, and other entities, so that as a community and as partners, we can continue to deliver the services and the basic needs that people need.
This is the Burden Healing Clinic, which is the clinic in the basement of Cross Lutheran, and we've been trying to be here to get vaccines to anybody who's coming through the food pantry. So anybody who's unvaccinated and wants one, we can provide it. We just find it really important to kind of meet people where they are. Life gets busy, so if anybody wants it today, or I think at most of the food pantry we're planning to be here.
Well, I came here and got my vaccination.
Did you? Excellent.
Yeah.
You're now a superhuman.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
How's that make you feel?
That makes me feel pretty good that I can come here in God's house and get it.
That's right. Very good. I know it really means a lot to not only ourselves, but the whole community as we help out.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah. I mean, it's
Just to get everybody thinking.
I'm just grateful to God for people that do things earnestly. Let me just say that. Because it is such a great, and I gotta say it again, a great thing for God to see us being this way. You hear me?
Amen. Yes. Very
Because
nice.
God is love.
So I think one of the things we want today to be is interactive if you have questions. I think that video really brings up, as we were talking before, one of the big challenges is how do we from suburban head into the urban area, especially with the challenges of the differences in the COVID safety protocols and the challenges of COVID that our urban churches are really still facing. As I looked at that video again, that was probably the August of last year. And you know, they were thinking programming's only a month away, a couple months away, and they really did not have that last year. So they were still operating kind of under that COVID challenges. So I think as we look forward, it's how do we reintegrate and how do we build those relationships to go deeper? And I know that was one of the challenges we kind of talked about. How are we going to move forward? So I think as we work through the presentation today, where do you see yourself? I think it's, we're going to talk about the bike ride, and sorry, I'm kind of with you on the ride, run, walk. We're going to talk about that. That's a great event as a community to come together as a synod, but how do we really work on our relationships with the urban partner churches? And as a board, that's something we're looking at, and Pastor Chris is certainly spearheading that, to just build a deeper relationship as we go forward. So really, any questions as we go, just either raise your hand or ask. We'll see if we can come up with an answer. If not, we'll figure something out later. Go ahead.
Where is the Cross Church?
Cross Church, 16th
Walnut.
and Walnut.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Is anybody who's been there? Okay. What kind of events were you there for?
We used to have lunch. We used to feed lunch on a Wednesday.
And was that a lunch and a service, or a light, or a prayer?
It
Or
was just lunch.
just lunch?
Just lunch.
I went to a Bible study.
A Bible study there?
And then that summer
Church.
event that they had.
Okay.
In the church.
I was involved in that lunch program for about 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So the lunch program really gave you a chance to not only serve, but to kind of sit down with people also? Kind of?
Kind of interact with them, or you have to cross the serving line. I don't
Okay.
know how involved we got
Yeah.
with those that were having eating lunch.
It was an interesting byproduct. My 2 grandchildren, one grandchild, when his girlfriend came along, and he liked it so much down there for he had a project for his school. He painted the basement down there.
Okay. Where they hold the clinic and...
Exactly.
Yeah.
The meals and so forth.
Yeah. I think in the video we also saw their transition. I think they were trying to, originally on the food pantries, make it more of a shopping experience for the guests. But of course the pandemic turned it back into a pre-packed bag. And I think as we come back out, there'll be a challenge. How are we going to provide that service again that's comfortable and works for everybody? So there's a lot of challenges ahead, but I think with interaction and relationship, we'll be able to solve those. There are some, I don't know if some of you remember, there was a lunchbox program through Outreach for Hope during the height of the pandemic when everything else was shut down. And I was lucky enough to drive a couple of those routes. To me, it was amazing. They were still out, you know, knee-deep at the front lines handing out food, and the rest of us were having no meetings at all. I know for our church, we weren't even allowed on the property. And it just kind of amazed me that they stayed there and they were still pushing forward. So I have a huge amount of respect for what they accomplished through challenging times. They could have easily just said, oh, everything's done. But through different partners, I think you guys adjusted here. They kept serving people food. Some places in Kenosha, they actually expanded They went from 40 families to 120 families. So that's the kind of frontline ministry that's going on that we're trying to support through Outreach for Hope. So, and again, as I go through, please, any questions, just raise your hand or shout it out, so in case I missed something. All right, so Outreach for Hope. What's our mission? We inspire donors to live and give generously by investing their gifts as a resource for transformation in ELCA Greater Milwaukee Synod ministries serving communities of poverty. So what's that actually mean in English? We give grants to the ministries. That's really our main focus right now, that serve low-income neighborhoods, so that our synod continues to be a presence in these areas. One of the interesting things I learned from my time on the board is we're one of the few synods in the country that has a program like this that supports urban ministries. There's a lot of synods that have nothing going on in the urban areas because of flight, and they weren't prepared for it. So the Milwaukee Synod is actually recognized nationally with this program as kind of an example that other synods should be looking at. So we are blessed to have that program.
I'm just wondering, if that's the case, why then has this congregation done that? If the national, trend is to move away from that.
Well, I think there was foresight. They saw the problem coming. They got, back in the beginning, they got a large donation, and they were able to set up a separate fund as a synod to get started. And that's really what made the difference. The other thing Outreach for Hope, as we go through, you'll see, is we're part of sharing the knowledge, right? It's easy, I think, as a suburbanite congregation, I'm part of one, to worry about ourselves, make sure we have enough stuff here, but I think it's challenging to get involved in the urban ministries. So I think that's the other thing Outreach for Hope provides, is that awareness that there are serious issues that through the church we can solve. And I think that's been one of the great things Outreach for Hope has done. So we did, as I mentioned, establish in 1995. There was a large donor that started everything. Some of you might recognize the pastors in those, depends how long you've been around. And then in 2005, they separated, so we are a separate operating 501c, but we are definitely intertwined with the GMS, the Greater Milwaukee Synod. Definitely working together with them. There is a different charity number, but it is definitely together as a synod. And I think that's really important.
Can you talk about that? Like, what is the relationship between Outreach for Hope and the synod, sharing resources, communication, or staffing?
Sure. So we do share staff. That's the big one. So go that slide. So Pastor Chris is now our executive director. I think it's been 2 years now, a little bit longer. And he has a communication assistant, so it's part-time for Outreach for Hope, part-time for the synod, and then also the administrative assistant is part-time for both, and also the bishop. So it's a combination of the employees work for both, and then Chris works very closely with the bishop and a couple of the assistants to the bishop to make sure those relationships are working and where there might be areas of issue. But as far as the funding and the Outreach for Hope board takes care of the fund and also granting of the funds. The bishop and assistant to bishop are part of that committee, but they're just part, and their input is, they help us on where there's issues or where we could apply funds, but the ministries themselves are the ones that have to ask for the funds from Outreach for Hope. Does that help? Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
But the one thing I like though is that if you give a donation to Outreach for Hope, you're not giving to administrative.
Correct. Right.
You're giving totally to the ministry.
Yeah, we use the fund to help cover the administrative costs, and then all the direct giving goes to the grants, to the Outreach for Hope churches. Thank you for clarifying that. Try to keep the black hole from existing if possible, right? That's always a challenge. So one of the things that really helped on Outreach for Hope was a bike ride that was started back in 2008 by, I believe, Incarnation in Waukesha. And you can see that top picture is the first group that started. And now as you've seen today, we have a run, ride, and walk, if we can get it all out in one sentence. The interesting thing that I really like is, as you see in the top photo, the first one was a family bike ride, and we've really kept that theme. We were challenged a little bit through COVID, but over the years, it's really a family bike ride. It's not a competitive race. And then we've added the walk and run component, and really a fellowship component if anybody signed up this year. So I'll get a little more on the bike ride later, but again, it's kind of not only a fundraiser, but also a chance to share stories. What are the ministries doing in the urban areas? What are the funding going to? So we ask the urban partners to be at the sites, and they help us on our start line. They're kind of the starters, but they also share a story, so people know a little bit more what's going on. 501c, and, oops, wrong way, sorry about that. And then Chris, we talked about, and staff. We do have a board. We have 10 members on the Outreach for Hope board. We're working very hard on diversity. We have a mixture of suburban and urban members. We have some people that are in the ministries themselves. Gives us a little better perspective as a board. We are still, I believe, looking for a couple board members, just again to broaden that horizon. And we are a working board, so we're trying to have subcommittees with people with expertise to really kind of, because Pastor Chris is really by himself. He's got the 2 part-time assistants, but he really relies on the board to kind of get some of the work done for him. So always looking for that. So what about our partners? Here's the list of 15 partners that we've worked with over the years. And as I mentioned, Cross and Reformation, I believe, are your 2 main churches that you partner with. And I know that as you move forward, there'll be some challenges on connecting and what they need. And I think they're struggling as much as anybody else, right? As we come out of COVID, they're trying to figure out where their ministries are going just as much as we are at our churches. So I think we all need patience, but hopefully good communication to work on that. Oops, keep going the wrong way, sorry about that. So what do they do? 18 food pantries or meal programs. Some of the meal programs are starting again, but that's been fairly slow. But definitely if they had a meal program, they definitely did like a brown bag lunch, or they've replaced it with a carry-out option for most of the ministries. And then there's after-school programs. To me, this is one of the key areas that I think is so important. I volunteer at my daughter's school. She teaches at 41st or 35th and Silver Spring at an MPS school, and the kids need the additional help. And I think this is an area where, as partners, we can really step up and give them that someone to help them with their homework. Maybe it's just reading a book. It's amazing when the kids get just a little bit of time, how much they'll blossom and grow on the education side. And as we all know from COVID, MPS schools are going to be struggling. Those kids really got bum rap, whatever, just trying to get connected just didn't happen. So they've got a lot of catch up to do, and I think my perspective is we could do a lot as a church to just give these kids a chance to help learn how to read and some basic math skills, especially at the younger ages. So I think that's a great opportunity as a synod that we can kind of help and make a huge difference. I'm amazed at the little attention I can give a kindergartner for a couple hours. I come back a day or 2 later, they're just more positive. So I think it's something that we could really make a huge difference. And then the safe baby programs that they operate, just really an opportunity to provide education for young moms. They also usually will provide some needed supplies for safety for the kids. There's a bunch of gardening programs, and there's a beekeeping at Redeemer. I don't know if anybody's been to Redeemer, the top of the roof. And part of the video I'll show will enhance that garden photo from All Peoples. And there's a great story with that of a connection that really started from the lunchbox program with one of the drivers. So it's kind of neat how someone stepping into the urban environment got to know a few people, and they made just different connections, and it's a great story. Clothing closets are are huge. I went down to Racine a couple weeks ago. They celebrated their 25th of the ELCA Outreach Center in Racine. And it was amazing the effort that they do to provide people clothing. I believe that top photo is there, not 100% sure. But they do a really nice job of having things to be a shopping experience for the moms or the dads that are coming in looking for clothes. And they also realize the homeless don't have a choice. So they don't worry about if they come on Monday and they come on Wednesday, they need two more new clean shirts, that's fine. So they understand the issues and they're not worried about like, oh, you can only come once a month. So they really are open to helping these families and they make a huge difference. The turnout for the 25th, they had hot dogs and root beer floats. I was amazed by the neighborhood people that came to support and celebrate. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but they're making big impact by providing clothes for people. And some of them are kind of that neighborhood store. Again, they're trying to make it so it's an experience and not just here's your bag of clothes. We have 7 on-site medical clinics, and those continued throughout COVID, which was crucial. And I think also the voice of the church to their community was really important on the vaccinations and the healthcare. So we'll continue. Some of these are also the only place that people go. I struggled with that. I couldn't wrap my head around that. If we have all this healthcare available, why is there an issue? And the problem is they might have health insurance, but where do they go in the neighborhood of 14th, right? So I think these provide a critical need to provide services to a local community that wants to walk in there. And then we have 6 ministries offering bilingual. And then different things, literacy classes, legal and employment services, prison ministries, the Breaking the Chains. You know, the goal there is once you're incarcerated to come out and not go back. But they've got such a stigma on them that the Breaking the Chains ministry is meeting them at the prison and then they transition with them outside. And again, I think this is an opportunity as a synod that we can come together and really help make that transition successful and really make a difference in the lives of people in the urban communities. Now this is the big hope. Yep, see if it comes up. This is all people's.
It is a food desert area. There are very limited options around here. We try and plant seeds, not just of tomatoes and zucchinis, but also plant seeds of hope and peace in our neighborhood.
As I learned more about all the work being done at All Peoples, I heard about their garden. They were telling me about a plot partner program where they had members of the church extend that garden into their homes and grow vegetables. The light bulb came on, and then I said, well, one thing that we have out by St. Olaf Church is farmers and land. It mushroomed into a big program, really. There's at least 12 families now that support the program. Some of the farmers actually plant crops specifically for Outreach for Hope, and we've had teams from All Peoples come out and pick sweet corn and joining forces with All Peoples. It's been a great program. Everybody's enjoyed it.
We really seek to have an interactive partnership with our other churches in our neighborhood, not just do food. Steve and his church, that was just delightful because it's all this produce coming in, and a huge factor is produce we can't grow. Peppers, we grow very few peppers here. We're just not consistently growing. Larger crops like pumpkins, corn, we can't grow here. So with that layering in, we're all in this together. Well, we've been asking for it on and off for years.
They fed my family last week, they're the best.
Right, if I can get by it. Hopefully. So, Steve was one of the volunteer drivers with me during the lunchbox, and that's where he kind of got connected and that idea. And they actually have a couple of people at St. Olaf, which is out in Rubicon, and they actually do grow extra crops just for the All People's Food Ministry. So ideas, dreaming is, you know, for me, what if a CSA had a partnership where maybe you did half a box for yourself and the other half went to a food ministry. So I think, again, there's some opportunities with the surplus that's available in our areas. Can we get it efficiently into the urban markets where they need it? I also saw an interesting article the other day where someone bought an old greenhouse and they're going to throw 3 big hoop houses up and try to make that not only a food resource, but also a job training program. And I believe it was a $7 million investment into the north side of Milwaukee. But it's for youth to learn how to farm and job skills, and also produce food for the area. So there's a lot of things going on. I think we just have to try to connect and see where that goes. That is not a Outreach for Hope project, but I think it's the type of project that we need to be aware of, because if we try to solve it on our own, we're not going to get there. We need to work together. Maybe it's help get kids to that job site somehow, but we need to know what's going on so we can make that better relationship. Okay? So how are we going to make it happen? The annual Ride One, I knew I'd do that, walk, is coming up, and it's September 24th. There's some cards out on the table if you want to just scan the QR code, it'll get you right there. And the other nice thing we've switched, we still need volunteers, and we also just have a fellowship option. If you just want to go to the site and have a sandwich, and one thing I like, I run our finish line in Waukesha County. It's nice to have people there to welcome the participants back by ringing a bell or clapping or whatever. So when people say I can't do that, they can certainly come and stand and fellowship, and it is a chance to be together. So there is plenty of opportunity yet. I think I looked the other day, Chris, and there was 12 or 15 people registered from St. Matt's, and they are anywhere Ozaki, Racine, Kenosha, and Walk in Milwaukee. So for some reason nobody wants to come out to Waukesha here, but that's okay, we'll be all right. But I mean, so there's other people from your congregation going. If you don't go, you can also just support St. Matt's team for Outreach for Hope. And if you go to the website, there's an option to support your team. Our goal this year is $165,000. And as we mentioned earlier, that goes all towards grants directly to the urban ministries. So it is by far our biggest fundraiser of the year.
Tim?
Yep.
If one wants to volunteer to do the fellowship part of it, is it on the website? Yeah,
there is just an option you can pick which site you want, and then sign up for fellowship. So it'll say like 30-mile bike ride, walk, run, fellowship. So it's actually a separate option that you can sign up for. And there's no registration fee, it's a free will offering to sign up. Okay. Good question, thank you. Anybody else on that? Okay. Here's just some photos of last year's bike ride. And I think it's your bottom left. This was kind of cool. They came out to Waukesha last year. They kind of assisted riders, so they're pedaling in the back, and then they've got adapted wheelchairs in the front. And I think we had about 4 or 5 of them, and we had, I think, 7 or 8 the year before COVID in 19. So it's an amazing group that volunteers to have people ride with us. So kind of a neat thing. Lenten devotions. Every year, Outreach for Hope publishes or presents Lenten devotions for the season. They're written mainly by our urban ministry partners, but it's a great chance with Pastor Chris now. They've all gone to video, so you can get an automatic YouTube feed every morning during Lent, and kind of a different perspective of what's going on for them during the Lenten season. In January, we've done the Super Bowl food drive, and we do that in connection also with the, what do they call it, the Super Bowl food, the national. And so 50% of the funds raised go to national, everything else stays local, but it's in conjunction during that Super Bowl time. That's been very successful. More coats and sweatshirts, we've done that the last couple falls. And over the last 25 years, $4.4 million has been given out by Outreach for Hope, really because of the generosity of folks like yourselves and others in the Greater Milwaukee Synod. Each week, what happens? There's almost 1,000 people are served through worship, 2,100 non-worship, which is interesting, but then the real big number is 3,500 people fed each week. Huge impact through those ministries. And really, you know, the other thing that always amazes me is their staff level is almost nil. It's the pastor and maybe 1 or 2 other part-time workers. So they really are grinding out hard, and any help that they can get would be appreciated. So I think as we go forward, that connection is going to be a big piece. So what can you do? You can give online, of course. As I mentioned, you could support your team from St. Matt's. That's really easy. You can sign up for the e-news, and I do have, I think out there's actually a clipboard that you can sign up. We can get you on the email list. And then show up for the Run, Ride, Walk is a big thing. So always needed. And more questions or?
I don't know how much you can speak to the individual ministries, but more about breaking the chains.
Sure.
Like, is it, I mean, it's volunteers who are walking with people when they're coming out of prison, like how does that work?
Yeah, I'm not expert on it, but they do have they have a pastor who's dedicated to the program. So they actually hold services at Cheney before, and they do a worship service, and I believe a Bible study. I also was at Hebetha a couple weekends ago. That's a church in Milwaukee, and they had 2 people from Cheney that were allowed to come, young adults, to a confirmation program. So they got special permission to be released, to come to church, do the confirmation program, and then once they're released, there's some volunteers then that step up and help them with clothing and kind of getting resituated.
Right.
I'm not sure what all they do, but I know it's kind of that initial step out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but definitely a challenging situation. I know I had to pick up my brother once. He went in August. I picked him up, I think in February they released him. In August it was 90 degrees when he went into jail. He got let out with a t-shirt and shorts. Yeah. And so where does someone like that go? They go back to where they last were, you know. So my brother was lucky enough, I picked him up and we started over. But that's kind of what this group is doing. So when they come out, they don't have to go back to the same group of friends they were associating with. But it's, you know, we don't think it's a challenge, but it really is, right? You walk out the door and what do you know? You've been in there for 3 months, 6 months, and who do you go to but where you were last time? So they're doing great work there and challenging ministry. So, and they definitely need people. And there's one that they're doing an online worship, and I think they're looking for people just to participate in the worship also. So depending on your comfort level. You know, the prison ministry doesn't mean you have to go into the prison. There's other ways to help. But it could be a great opportunity. So thanks for that question.
I was just going to say, in the past, before COVID, at Christmas time, they would gather outside on Christmas Eve and sing Christmas carols, volunteers, people who wanted to join in. So people inside kind of felt some Christmas.
Yeah, good. And I think some of that's just remembering some of those things that were done in the past. I mean, it seems like it was such a long time ago, but it really wasn't. And how do we get back to helping after COVID? Yeah. Other questions?
Can I ask one other question?
Oh, sure, yeah,
They're
no.
just popping into
Yeah,
my head.
just whatever.
So what's your background? And you said you've been on the board for a while, and what's your background outside of that?
I was in retail for 40 years. I am the youngest of 7 boys. Service was just part of a way of life for us. So my interest in Outreach for Hope started not only with the bike ride, but also how to make that connection. For me, it's more than writing the check. It's also about getting into those ministries. And I also think the church is the one that's going to solve some of these problems. And we've got a long ways to go, but the separation that we see between our suburban and urban, even in this synod, is challenging. Certainly outside of the synod is huge, but from my perspective, the church should be the one that's solving the problem, or at least putting the first step forward. And I think we have that challenge in front of us. So that's certainly one of my interests, not just going down to give them something, but how can we build that relationship stronger, so that when I go to that kindergarten classroom, I'm probably the first old white guy they see, and they see white here, and they're just like, you know, kind of crazy when you think about it, though, right? That I might be the first white guy they've seen, older white guy, you know. So it just shows you that we need to get the flow of people has to be better, and as we talked about, both ways. I think we're really good about, hey, come join we're having a gathering here, come join us, but are we good about going down there? And I think that's one of those relationship pieces we need to work on.
I'll take some of that white hair.
I'm lucky to have it, right? Does that answer that?
Yeah, thank you.
We always had an extra chair at the table, believe it or not. Even with 7 boys, the rule was there was always room for more. So kind of an interesting, when I look back, I mean, at the time it was like, what are we bringing one more person to the competition here for, you know? But it was an interesting perspective my mom had. So.
And your home congregation is?
I'm at Unity in Brookfield, so Cross of Life. I spent a lot of time in Heartland, so. Good. Any?
The list of churches that are part of the group that
Yep.
you serve, that changes from year to year, doesn't it?
Yes.
As you evaluate, how do you decide?
There is a separate committee that looks at, each church has to provide a written application, and then we look at history, you know, what's the relationship, what are they accomplishing, and to be honest, it's going to be really challenging this year, because during COVID, the quantitative numbers kind of all fell apart, and now we're coming out of that, and we've got to make some, I think, tough decisions on who do we support going forward to make the most impact of the dollars given to us. And I think that's going to be a challenge for us as a group, and I think it's a challenge for the synod. The bishop is part of that grant committee, but we really have to make sure the money's invested in the best spot and used to get the most impact. And sometimes ministries just don't happen. The nice thing is, what we're trying to work with is, we want to know that before the next grant cycle starts, so maybe the funds can be used in a different way to help support them. Somebody might have had an idea for a program and it just didn't take off. Can we go a different direction this year? So, but pretty much just discernment, and then we go back and ask questions to the applicants. But again, we're really trying to make it forward thinking. The last few years it's been, send the application, we'll let you know what you get. We're really switching that, send the application early, we've got some questions for you, hopefully you got questions for us as a board, and then we work out who gets the funding. But the money is set before we start. So this year, like, we know it's going to be $243,000 will be our fall grant cycle. And that's the main one that we use for the churches. There's also grants that are made during the year if something comes up. Hepatha had their van hit by a reckless driver when it was parked. I mean, we see too many of those on the news. The city towed it away. The insurance company gave them, said, here, you can have this much to fix it, and the city crushed the van before they could get it back. So anybody, you can hear by your gas, trying to work with the city of Milwaukee to figure out a refund on something they crushed, and it all happened really quick. And so between the insurance money and Outreach for Hope, we were able to get them funds that they can now start looking for a new van. But again, it's the crazy stuff that we can't even wrap our head around that the ministries are dealing with. And I think that's the other thing, by having that relationship, we hear that story, we're ready to step up. And that's, so we keep some flexibility in our grants for that also.
Do you cap the number of churches that you serve, or is it based on the grant proposals and how much you have to spend, to give?
So it's not a hard, it's really more the funding is the hard cap, and then it's just a matter of making that impact, yeah. So it has been anywhere from 13 to 18 maybe, and there are a couple new churches that we're looking at, to new ministries to help this year. Some of them are we're getting a step away, a little collaboration also, so, yeah. And the good thing is, I don't know where you guys are on Equipping the Saints, the Synod fundraiser. I don't know if that's part here yet, right, overstepping maybe, but they're going to have some money available next year that's called collaboration grants, which should help allow us to fund a little broader perspective. So if they're working like with the ELCA outreach ministry, we're hoping to work with the Racine vocational ministry to kind of put those together with some funding. So some of that kind of thing is what we're hoping will happen down the road, above and beyond our grants. Our grants really tend to be more keeping the ministry afloat day to day. Yeah. And also leadership training, you know, coming from the business side, I look at the urban churches and go, where's your succession plan, you know? And they just don't. They have interns that come in, but I think that's going to be challenging over the next 10 years as I look at it. So if we can help with some leadership training to get them prepared. You know, I know Chris has been gone a couple of years here, but you have people that step up, right? And they just don't have that in their congregations. They don't have that experience and knowledge. So I think it's going to be another challenge that we're looking at, is providing that leadership training for them so they're ready for those transitions. So we're really positive on Outreach for Hope going forward. There's some challenges, but I really think the Synod itself is really what's going to drive this, and being involved together. And Chris has done a great job of going out preaching to a lot of different congregations each week. And as I mentioned, he is going to do once a month as kind of a ministry church that everybody's from the Synod's kind of invited to. So we're just starting that. So if you're on the Outreach for Hope email list, you'll get that notification that the Outreach for Hope group, is coming to this church for this Sunday, and then one of the people from the church will kind of show us around and tell us about their ministry. So again, we're trying to share what's going on at different churches. Good. Anything else? Thank you, everybody. Anybody? Other questions?
Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it.